Hi, friends. Welcome back to Not Again, the podcast that brings college-level analysis to preschool-level content. I'm one of your hosts, Rebecca.
And I'm your other host, Alan.
And today we're talking about The Incredibles.
Yes, The Incredibles.
I was just pausing for effect, even though this is an audio medium, a pre-recorded. We don't have a studio audience.
You'll put in some applause.
Yeah, but different applause than the I Found a Lesson applause.
Okay.
We'll put in cheers. Because we love everyone loves The Incredibles.
It is.
That's not true at all.
That's
I'm
not
sure the
true
people
at
who
all.
don't like it, but
yeah. It was a well-received and well-loved movie.
It was, yes.
At the time.
And even to me, so we'll talk about that. But okay, let's do this. So today we're talking about The Incredibles. Okay, awesome. So yes, let's start there. I don't know. Do we usually do updates about our lives?
A little. Our fearless listener knows a little bit about our lives.
That's true. So I am now the manager of a doggy daycare. I didn't want to be the manager of a doggy daycare, nor did I really want to work at a doggy daycare, but I was coming back from glass school and I was like, I need a job. And I found it and I was like, oh, okay. And then I started, and despite it being chaotic from jump, I fell in love with working at a doggy daycare, which I wasn't really planning on doing. You'd think I would because I love dogs, right? But so now that's that. So I'm working a lot. And so we're finding time to record, but not easily. So bear with us if we have to skip a day, a week here and there. For instance, we're recording this episode yesterday, if you're listening to it on Saturday. But, we'll get there. Also, I think that what else? I don't know. Warren is almost done with preschool. He's going to be going into kindergarten next year. Ari is 18 months.
Yeah.
And some change. And he's huge. I don't see, this is the thing with so when I went to glass school for 4 months and came back, everything about my children seemed different. It looked like they'd grown 10 feet and Warren's voice had changed. It was just ever so slightly deeper.
Yeah.
But because I hadn't heard him talking for 4 months, I could tell that he sounded different. And yeah, as soon as you start living with him again, you just never notice changes. To me, Ari is still 1 foot tall and he's over 2 feet, right?
Yeah.
So it's just I was really? He's tall? Is he? Because he looks like a baby to me. He's a baby, right? So
he's very tall and his head circumference and all his weight are all off the charts, but equally, so he's proportional.
So yeah, I think that it's okay to share this. Warren is on the spectrum, and part of this podcast is lightly discussing that, right? I don't want to share intimate details about our lives because that's weird, especially when it involves your children. But I'll say that I had a meeting with his teacher today and his speech and occupational therapist. That's just part of the gig. And she was telling me that his teacher, who, by the way, this, I guess, we'll put this in our trivia and goof section. Here's some trivia about us. His teacher's video lessons during COVID, she would always start with "Hi, friends." And since I was trying to imitate a preschool show for this podcast, that's where I got the "Hi, friends" from. So that's,
I don't know if I knew that. I mean, I knew that, but I don't know if I retained that information.
You didn't retain the information. So it's the idea of video, at home video learning for kids in preschool was hilarious to me. It's let's just do some at home online learning for my 3-year-old. No, but we tried. It was terrible. I think everyone knows by this point that, 2020 was terrible.
Yeah, we were all trying to figure that one out together, and we did okay.
Yeah, so anyway, I met with her, and she said that he loves binoculars, which we know. The other day he got a gift from his aunt, my sister, that involved stamps and the little circular dot stamps, and he took 2 of them and put them up to his eyes like they were binoculars. He loves binoculars. So apparently there is a classroom job that is weather inspector, where somebody gets to take binoculars and look out the window and decide what the weather is like. And Warren loves this job. He is dedicated to it. He's a model employee, but he loves the binoculars and he's learning how to socialize. So after he has determined the weather, I didn't ask how well he did that, by the way. It's very possible that he looks at the binoculars and goes clouds and then leaves. But he will go up to each of his classmates, look at them through the binoculars and say, hi, whatever their name is, and then go to the next classmate, look at them through the binoculars and say, hi. And so he'll do that just like when it's his duty to do weather or whatever, he'll also make sure to look at all of his classmates through the binoculars. So what I'm saying is that our kid's really cute, if at times a handful. Speaking of trivia and goofs, let's go over some more trivia and goofs. For those who don't know, this is a segment we introduced in our 50th episode, which was last episode. If you haven't listened to that one, I will say this. It occurred to me, a couple things occurred to me, but one of them is that, like, I'm pretty sure that the dragon show that we hate, that we'll never talk about, like, not explicitly, but, like, as a standalone episode yeah. is called Rescue Riders. So, so the fact that we called it Robo Dragon Rescue Racers is pretty close, but the point was to rip off other TV shows.
Well, so. and also it's kind of like, we're the dollar store version. We're, the Snow Queen Princess House or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I guess, yeah. So anyway, and also we forgot to name the Yellow Dragon, which we still haven't,
To tweet at us your Yellow Dragon.
Yeah,
your construction crew.
Yeah, not Doug, because that's the up character.
That's been taken.
And not Dump, but that would be funny.
Dump would be hilarious.
Yes. So
Stump.
We're at Not Again Pod if you want to tweet at us your catchphrases for robot dragons or your names for the yellow robot dragon. And since I immediately went off track, let's just do that sound effect one more time. For real this time, let's do some trivia and goofs.
I thought it was trivia and goofs for Robo Dragon Rescue Racers.
No, I got one more.
Okay.
So we're still on The Good Dinosaur because I want to wrap this up, but like next time I'll probably throw some Incredibles trivia and goofs in there. I bet there's a ton of our favorite one I'll pull from just my own memory is when Helen/Elastigirl is going to change into her super uniform on the plane. She goes into the bathroom to change, even though she thinks she's alone. But like her kids sneak onto that plane and they're invisible, or Violet's invisible and Dash is hiding. And so, but she doesn't know that her kids are there, but she still goes into the bathroom to change.
Yeah, did she not trust the plane that she borrowed from Spud or whatever the guy's name was? Chip?
Shug?
Yeah, whatever. Anyway.
Scuba.
She borrowed a plane.
Ryder? No, that's the kid from. Okay. So obviously they just didn't want to deal with the fact that she's going to strip down in front of her kids. So they were just like, we'll have her go in the bathroom. But that's a goof-ish. Anyway, originally Arlo, the dinosaur, by the way, listen to episodes 48 and 49 if you want to hear us talk about the good dinosaur, which was ironically very bad, was going to be older, approximately 17 years old, and voiced by Lucas Neff, for those Lucas Neff fans out there. However, director Peter Sohn, in order to convey the idea of Arlo maturing, as well as accurately portray the boy and dog relationship between Arlo and Spot, decided to make him younger, approximately 11 years old. And then there's an Easter egg. One of the asteroids at the start of the film resembles the Pizza Planet truck from the Toy Story franchise. They love sneaking that truck in. No one is more self-congratulatory than Pixar, I feel like. Like, do they deserve it? Sometimes, but I think they just the A113 thing is going a little too far, and, yeah.
It's like, hey, did you know that we made Toy Story? Like, yeah, we know.
Yes.
We know.
Yeah. And then here's one from Frozen, and then we'll be done with that section. The characters of Hans, Kristoff, and Anna, and Sven are a reference to Hans Christian Andersen. So we have Hans, Kristoff, Anna, Sven. Close enough. The author of Snedronik. Nope. I'm sorry I'm butchering your language, whoever speaks.
Danish?
We'll go with Danish.
Yeah.
The Snow Queen, which is the inspiration for Frozen. So, and this person helpfully added, say the names quickly in sequence to hear the similarity. Like, no, I think I got it, dude. But I appreciate you trying to help me through that. But I don't need you to hold my hand. So, that concludes our Trivia and Goofs segment. And now, let's talk about the horrible, I don't even know what word to use for the political nature of
the implications
yes,
of the Incredibles universe.
So before I knew podcasting was a thing, I did get my best friend Heather Sinclair and her partner Martin, who has been on this show, to talk about the Incredibles with me in a recorded way so that my AP literature students could hear analysis, but in a fun way because it's about like a kid's movie, So I have like memories of what we talked about there. And because The Incredibles is so beloved, or at least widely viewed, I don't think we need to do a beat by beat, analysis.
Probably not, no.
I will say that for all that we're about to talk about, and if you want to, I'm pretty sure my Bex 2, the sequel episode, is still on Patreon and also just in our podcast feed somewhere, but I did not like the sequel, but I still have a special place in my heart for the original. I thought it was fun and action-packed and really well animated, and I still think that. And I also think that as far as analysis goes, there's a lot there. You can see that there is the ironic twist of the ideals. In the beginning, we have Elastigirl saying she'll never settle down, and Mr. Incredible saying that he wants to. And then when that actually happens, Mr. Incredible doesn't want to settle down, and she does. We have the juxtaposition of Mr. Incredible stopping a speeding train with him not being able to stop a man who is smaller than him. We will have to touch on Pixar's just hatred of short people. But that's good juxtaposition. That's good storytelling. There's a lot of stuff. But if you look at this universe and the expectations that the supers have for how they will be treated, we get into some murky waters.
Yeah, I'd like to think that they were just going like, let's not think about this too much, how this would actually play out. Like if you just thought more deeply about how the universe would treat the supers and how the supers treat the universe.
We talk about a lot of movies and maybe TV shows too, where the villain is correct. And the only reason that Syndrome is a villain, if you look at it from reality's perspective, is that he wanted to sell weapons of mass destruction. And then, of course, anyone who wants to profit at other people's expense, is always portrayed as a villain because, hey, that's villainous. But his idea of I think that everyone should be able to be super, not just people born that way, is actually more correct and good than the general idea of the film, which is supers deserve to be treated above the law. And so I will take us through a plot summary for those of you who haven't seen the movie, although I would recommend it. I think it's a kind of cultural touchstone, and one of Pixar's finest as well, considering they did take a downward slump around Good Dinosaur and Brave. I didn't call it Bears this time. But basically, we have this this setup, which is good, of superheroes being a common part of everyday life. Superheroes and supervillains. So there are people who have superpowers. They call themselves supers, and it's it's just a given that they will be there to help save the world. It's a little bit satirical.
They're usually saving the world from other people with superpowers. Yep. So it's kind of like they are causing destruction to everyone while dealing with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So
right. And so I mean, this is something that I want to talk about, is that the non-super authorities, so police officers and the army or whatever, are just hopelessly incompetent against any super threat. So they and that's a common thread. If you look at one of my favorite cartoons of all time, Batman, from the 90s, because there's been a lot of animated Batman series, but the kind of early 90s Batman, with Kevin Conroy at his best, there is a consistent, almost like Chief Quimby, is that his name? That's Mayor Quimby.
Mayor Quimby and Chief Wiggum.
Chief Wiggum, there we go. Should I cut out my not knowing Simpsons characters?
No, you shouldn't.
I can't do it. I'm sorry. Chief Wiggum-esque character of just that stereotypical overweight, incompetent cop. It's meant to be part of the lore of Gotham, right? We have kind of a corrupt and or incompetent police force.
It's a kids show, so they couldn't do that the cops were actually criminals.
Yes.
Doing side deals.
They're just bad at their job.
They're just donut eaters.
Adults can see those undercurrents, though, especially in this day and age. But that's common. Is just the police on the best side of the spectrum try their best. They try their hardest. They have good intentions, but just can't. They can't measure up to whatever super powered threat there is. And on the Batman end of the spectrum is the police don't really try their best and are incompetent and aren't good. And that's kind of why Batman has to take up the cowl. And we'll get back to Batman because he doesn't have superpowers. So we're going to be talking about him.
Yeah.
But basically what happens, and that's why this is the movie's attempt at being satirical, is they get sued. So Mr. Incredible stops a train, stops everyone from blowing up. They survive, but because they get injuries, Sorry. No, first he stops a guy from committing suicide, and that guy sues him for preventing his death. And then it's followed up by the victims from the train. So lawsuits open up against superheroes, and we're supposed to be like, this is people these days suing at the drop of a hat, right? Like, we're supposed to be like, I see the satire here. Even Superman would get sued in this, like. But what's really happening is people are being like, hey, don't you think these people should be held accountable for their actions?
Yeah, they have secret identities, and they, at the end of the day, just wash their hands of whatever happened, good or bad, in a way. That I guess they want the adulation if it's good, but if it's bad, they just go like, well, never mind, guys. Good luck.
And so what happens is we have a time jump to where all superheroes have been forced to metaphorically hang up the cape and just live like everybody else who already has to live. And we're supposed to feel sorry for them because they don't get to live superly. They just get to live the lives that like we, the audience, live every day. And we're supposed to be like, oh man, I'm so sorry you have to, go to your job like I do.
And eat leftovers and raise your children.
Yeah, oh God forbid you have to raise your children. And then we have these kind of like this timeless nature to the film because, you have the kind of stay-at-home mom and the like retro architecture
kind of like
cars.
mid-century modern.
Yeah, and so, it's kind of they want it to be almost like timeless so that but like also just a nod to
there's like a little Art Deco kind of like the aesthetic to certain things, and there's some wondering about that as well because that was sort of a 1930s kind of Atlas shrugged thing that we think might have been an undercurrent to some of this, which is not good.
Yes, and I mean, like, generally that's it. It's like Mr. Incredible / Bob does not want to settle down. And I'm not going to say Mrs. Incredible, and we'll talk about why in a moment, but Elastigirl / Helen just wants to accept her life as it is now.
Yeah.
And they get into it it ruins their marriage for a while, and then Mr. Incredible secretly starts working for the villain of the film, who is somebody that he snubbed as a kid. Kind of poor super villain motivation, but perhaps that was part of the point, is that this kid was just looking for a reason to, but I don't know. It's just, he's unwittingly working for the villain, and then the villain reveals himself to be the villain, and then big fight scene, the end. Robots. But, I know we did the trivia and goof section. I will say that I loved this movie, and in the time of DVDs, I bought DVDs constantly. And this is probably like, I don't think we've even addressed this. Like, I'm not diagnosed or anything, but I have been considering the possibility that I am also on the spectrum, and I'm not ashamed of it. So I'm not like, I see no reason not to bring it up. But like, I think that one of the signals that I saw in my past life was that I would repeatedly watch movies, much like Warren does. And it would just never, I would never lose, it would never lose any of its entertainment value. I'd be just as entertained the 10th time as I was the first time. And so I would often watch the behind the scenes, still love those. And the commentary. Commentary was rarer. If it was an actor, I'd be interested to hear the actor's take on the role. Like, I watched Scott Pilgrim versus the World with the actors. But with The Incredibles, I did watch, I think Brad Bird was part of it. They talked about this scene that many people remember where Bob goes and moonlight hero works with Frozone. Sam Jackson's character, because we're on first name basis, Sam's character, and she's in a robe waiting up for him. It's a cliche scene, but they're doing the cliche scene on purpose, and they're fighting, and they had a lot of kind of meetings, I guess, or discussions about how to make sure that it did not look like it wowould be an abusive situation. Because Bob is much bigger than Helen, and it's escalating, and he is yelling, and they were discussing, like, they didn't want it to seem like they never were going to say like, hey, let's try this. They were saying they don't want it to seem like he's about to get physically violent towards his wife. And so at the very end of that argument, she goes, this is not about you. And with each word gets taller until she's towering over him. And they made that decision to show like, look, they're equal. Like, he's not about to hurt her. She's not about to hurt him. She's not this meek woman who's being like, yelled at by her husband. Yeah,
and that, I guess that's like she's not like afraid that something like that's going to happen, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so she's not afraid of her husband.
Mannerisms are like,
they're fighting, but like she's not afraid of consequences from her husband, So that I thought was an interesting choice. Like the fact that they like had to go in and make those choices and that they thought about those things, I thought was interesting. So anyway, it's about this dude who realizes he probably should love his family. But the overall motivation in the film for just like all the, we'll say good guys, for lack of better words, is to reclaim their hero status.
Their superior status.
And their superiority in society. And that's weird.
Yeah. It's not only, something I wanted to bring up, it's not only that they want the freedom from the consequences of their actions, and there's a lot to unpack there, just like there are certain classes of people who have a lot less consequences for their actions, and they are a protected class, but they also have a lot of the government agency, the Richard Nixon character, that like comes in and cleans up their messes after them. So there's a literal system of power, the U.S. government, that comes in and changes their identity and pays people off and relocates them and uses their immense amount of power to shield these people from the consequences of their actions. And I think that's also really telling that it is a systematic power that they have. It's not just the physical powers, that physical power, that the fact that they're stronger has manifested in a way that means that the system itself is there to back them up. So even in their exile, they are still privileged, very, 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 very privileged.
Yeah, and I think that they had to make sure that they handled their African-American representation carefully. Like, they had an African-American superhero right alongside the, white nuclear family superheroes. Without Frozone, this takes on, I mean, it honestly still takes on this undercurrent, but, like, this takes on racial implications about superiority. And I know they didn't want that allegory. I think
it's hard to avoid because the superhero and the superheroes living among us X-Men thing was always a allegory for civil rights. Like that was on purpose. Jack Kirby or I think it was Jack and Stan Lee said like, no, we want this to be an allegory for like there are two classes of citizens and one is being mistreated by the system and like. So they kind
of updated that for the 2000s movies to be like gay rights, like homosexual.
Yeah, of course.
But like it's the same.
But back in the 60s, 70s, like that's what they meant to, and
like,
so it's hard to do it.
It's
hard to do a superhero. So in this movie, they clearly reference the Watchmen, and I think they do that on purpose with the whole like superheroes having to hang up their hats or whatever. So it's kind of a kid's version of that. What I'm trying to say is that when you're making a superhero show, you do so in the environment of superhero shows that have already been made. I mean, if you make a zombie apocalypse movie, you're going to be compared to other zombie apocalypse movies, and themes in other zombie apocalypse movies are going to be brought into your movie, whether you kind of like it or not. So you kind of have to head it off at the pass, or just sort of accept that when you make a movie with established tropes. And so the established tropes of superheroes is you're going to if you don't explicitly touch on the themes or head off the themes from another franchise, those are going to seep in. And so what I'm saying is that with the X-Men, there is that allegory of classes being separated and civil rights between the two.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that somewhere along the line, they tried to say that like this incredibly privileged group of people, it's like men's rights activists and people who are saying that reverse racism is a thing. It's like, I'm white, I'm being reverse racismed. It's like kind of that mentality of like, oh man, I'm so oppressed. Has all of the privileges plus then some, like in the world. And so they were trying for this message of like, hey, people can't do good in society if like society keeps suing them or whatever. But like, are they doing good? Like, I know that we have this problem of super villains. So something needs to be able to stop them. Because again, we look back at, so we have two scenes that I'll pull for the cops/military. The first is the kind of establishing Mr. Incredible narrative, which is when he is in the very beginning before his wedding, doing a bunch of crime stopping. And so he gets a report in his mecha car, like Batmobile, essentially Mr. Incredible mobile, that there's an armed gunman, being pursued by police in a car chase. And so he intercepts that car chase. There's this funny scene with an old woman and a cat, I guess. Another parallel scene, he's able to help that old woman with her cat, but not able to help the old woman who comes in looking for insurance help later. So again, we have those parallel scenes and the juxtaposition of that.
Is it the same woman?
I have had to analyze it a lot, but this is terrible. The simple answer is no. Okay. I've looked at these two women and noticed that they're different. The harder answer is 15 years pass between the saving the cat and the other old woman. And so it's highly unlikely that saving the cat lady is also sitting in Mr. Incredible's office 15 years later. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe she looks different because she's 15 years older, Anyway, what were we going to say?
They meant to draw a parallel between the two old ladies and being able to help them and not being able to help them.
Right.
Or being able to help them with superpowers and not being able to help them because of bureaucracy.
Yeah, you know what? Heck, we'll say it's the same old woman and she lived to be 107. Good for her. But then her insurance failed her. So maybe not so good for her. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He secretly helped her. So, so the police there, when he stops the armed gunmen, which by the way are just humans, like they're not super, so these are supposedly the type of people that police are supposed to be able to stop, but he stops them, and the police, again in their kind of like retro uniforms, say like, oh, you've done it again, Mr. Incredible. They have that, well, quite literally hero worship, like we couldn't have done it without you. Later when he stops Bomb Voyage, they're also there like, how did you let him get away? Like they're relying on him.
Yeah, they're surprised that he failed, basically. Right. Yeah.
And so, they are relying on him to do their jobs because they simply can't. It's not that they don't want to, it's not that they're not trying, they just can't. And then the military tries to stop Syndrome's robot. Ineffective, right? They're not able to do that. So only superheroes can stop it. So that threat does exist. However, we're looking at people who are trying to resume being above the law, who are causing untold destruction. Like, this is something I've always paid attention to. Like, a good example is the Avengers, where it's just like the alien invasion happens and all of New York is just destroyed. And even in the end, when we're looking at one little snippet of cleanup that's just meant to be like a gag after the credits when they're eating shawarma, there's a person sweeping up in the background, but not the superheroes. Like, they caused the damage, but they are in no way responsible for helping to sweep up the shawarma shop. Like, they don't help with the after, like you said. They just kind of like, they take the accolades, but they don't take any of the negative stuff that happens. So superheroes always just cause tons of destruction. You look at Superman fighting
Zod.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's live. I'm thinking of the cartoon because I'm not a Superman person. Like, I'm not a fan of him.
Yeah.
But like, he's got that one guy, that one guy. Anyway, yeah. So they're fighting and they're like crashing through buildings, right? Because Superman is Superman and he can just crash through a building and it won't hurt him. But like, meanwhile, that building's crashed through. Like, did he kill anyone when he was doing that? Like, how many lives are lost and how many buildings are destroyed?
Even if the building stays standing, are you ever going to really trust it again? Like, you've got to rebuild the building, man.
Yeah, you can't just like patch it up with some duct tape and cellophane. Like, So they're just trying to resume that life of just being able to leave tons of destruction in their wake. And the only real hint we get at that is like during that fight that I was referencing earlier, Mr. Incredible says, it was on fire, structurally unsound. The building was coming down anyway. And Helen goes, what? You knocked down a building? And like, she's upset about this, but I don't think she was upset about it like if they had been Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, I don't think she would have been upset about it. It was just because they're supposed to keep a low profile that she's upset about it. She's not actually like, oh, you caused destruction saving people. Like, she did that all the time probably when she was in the super uniform. I don't know. I'm getting all amped up. This has to be a short record today, so I'm going to make notes to future Bex and future Alan, things we have to talk to. Here's the bullet list of things that we're going to talk about next time. next time on Not Again. I was going to say Dragon Ball Z, but I can't. Because we're not Dragon Ball Z mostly. We're going to talk about Syndrome and him essentially being Batman but evil, and like how right he was. We're going to talk about Pixar's weird fascination with like hating short people, even though we already touched on it in our Ratatouille episodes. Probably should talk about it again. You weren't even there for the Ratatouille episode, so talk about it again. We're going to talk about Edna Mode's character design. Whether they intended her to look like insert the fashion designer she was modeled after here.
Edith Head.
They missed the mark. They threw the dart at the dartboard intending to hit this very famous fashion designer, and the dart veered off course and landed on racist. So we're going to have to talk about that. We are also going to have to talk about the concept of The Incredibles and Mrs. Incredible. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, you'll just have to wait till next time. I'm sure there'll be other stuff, but we are going to do another 30 minutes at least on The Incredibles next week. Until then, thank you for listening, thank you for existing, and thank you for helping us to maintain our marbles for just one more week. We will see you next time, but friends, remember, if you have superpowers, you just are better than other people. And you can believe that and fight for your right to be treated like royalty wherever you go. So take that lesson away with you. We'll talk to you next time.
Don't, though.
Yeah, probably don't take that lesson. We just didn't find a lesson this time, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll find lessons next time, promise. We'll see you next week. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Alan.
And soon I will have an actual sign-off for this podcast that works. Bye, friends.
Bye.